Hello, and welcome to the Flicks Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This episode, we have Netflix 110th film. This is becoming a mouthful. I don't know, we might need to drop the numbering. This is the 2018 romantic comedy, Nappily Ever After. It's directed by Haifaa al-Mansour. It stars Sanaa Lathan, Ernie Hudson, Lyriq Bent, Lynn Whitfield, Whittle and Camille Guatyso. That's horrible, but I'm Jesse and I'm here with MJ. How are you?
I'm good. You were actually really nailing them. I was very impressed with your pronunciation for everything, and you just let it slip a little bit at the end.
I did, yeah. I think I was like so proud of myself, and I got to the last one. I'm like, shut the bed. That's okay. So we obviously have this film that we're going to discuss today in the podcast. So we do start our show with our little quick summary called our Fast Flicks for this one. So MJ, start us off with your Fast Flicks for Nappily Ever After.
All right, so we've got a damaged yet financially successful 20-something ad guru must strip back years of atrocious parenting based on appearance and perfection to focus on herself and what makes her happy, starting with her hair.
Aw. That's nice. I like that. That was really cute.
It's much nicer than it was meant to sound, to be honest. I wrote it down and then never read it out loud. It is nice. It wasn't supposed to sound that nice.
No, it was really cute. I liked that. I've just said, when an expected proposal doesn't eventuate, Violet goes on a journey of self-discovery to discover what really defines her.
Bang.
Left it very open, but I think your mention of hair probably is something that we need to discuss because this one's going to cover a lot of things about hair, and we're probably going to go into spoiler territory quite a bit with this one quite early. So if you did want to see this film, this is your chance to pause us and go back and check it out. So let's get into spoilers with our history or understanding of the film. So I'm looking forward to hearing, because I think this one has got quite a good little backstory.
It has a backstory that's a little bit different to others. Whether it's that exciting is, left to be said. I know. But it's Nappily Ever After, based on a book by the exact same title, written by Trisha R. Thomas. I think she wrote it in the year 2000, and I also think there's been 8 or so books off the back of it. So obviously, there's a bit of success in this for young Trisha. But this adaptation was previously in development with Universal back in 2003. 2003, that's a long, long time ago. They actually had Halle Berry on board to star in the film, which makes me think that would have been like peak Halle Berry time as well. So could you imagine if Universal was bringing out this romantic comedy in 2003 with Halle Berry, back when romantic comedies were absolute blockbusters in cinemas? It would have been very, very interesting. So that's all well and good, because none of that actually eventuated, as you probably know. So it wasn't until 2017 that Netflix decided they were going to give this adaptation a crack. And in September of that year, they basically began principal photography. That was happening all in Atlanta. As you can probably tell when you watch the film, very heavy Atlanta references in it. And it was basically released a year later on Netflix. It's very interesting, Jesse. Today is the 21st of September, and this film came out on the 21st of September in 2018. So 2 years to the day from us recording this. Obviously, we'll release it in a day or two, but I thought that was very interesting. So we're 2 years behind, exactly.
That's an awesome pickup. And I think as we keep moving, we're going to get further and further behind. So we could look at this benchmark now. We're 2 years behind. When are we ever going to get any closer? But yeah, I think I'm enjoying this still, so that's okay.
Well, if Netflix stopped releasing like 2 films a week, we'd be sweet.
Yes, that'd give us a bit of time to catch up. But at this stage, it's going to take us about 10 years to get there. Good. All right. Well, I thought this one was a little bit, I guess. I'm sorry. Did you have any other things that you wanted to talk about? I guess
the only other thing that I did pick up is that the Sanaa Lathan, who plays the main character, actually cut off her real hair during filmmaking, which, to be honest, was pretty obvious when watching that happened. And I think if you really want to get yourself into this role and what this film's trying to say, it wouldn't be a great look if you didn't actually do it, to be honest.
Yes. I think that was yeah, good one. And the other sort of, I guess, realism in this one was there's a scene where she goes to a cancer support group, and the people in that group were actually all real life battlers too, which I thought was a nice little touch as well. I guess, yeah, leading into this one, obviously you said it was based on a book, and I just thought it was interesting that they changed the main character's name. And I always find this very interesting when you do an adaptation. So still the name started with V, but she's called Venus instead of Violet in the book. So Clint was still Clint, these sorts of characters, but I think I'm looking at a few of the themes and ideas in this one. That idea of Venus sort of goes in with that idea of strong females and things like that. So I guess it's a creative choice that people made when they put this to film, but I think that name still could have worked in the film as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else? So I guess with this one, the word Nappily, I was like, I needed to look it up because I was like, this sort of, you have a nap, like a nana nap, or you have a snooze, but it's obviously a word to do with hair, and it's this tightly curled or coiled hair that's often offensive. And I guess that obviously leads into this discussion of hair that we're going to have throughout this film, because it's quite an interesting thing, and the tagline leads into that, where the tagline is "Let yourself grow," and it's not necessarily just about the hair, but about what we're talking about with the characters for this one too. I guess.
So how common a term is Napoli? Because I did the same thing about 15 minutes into the film. I Googled it really quickly. I didn't want to disrupt my viewing experience. So I Googled it. I didn't really see anything that was like the dictionary definition pop up for me. And I didn't want to dig any further. So I just stopped. Is Napoli is it a common term, or is it something that people just who are maybe in the beauty industry know? I don't know. It doesn't even ring a bell for me.
Yeah, I'm the same. I had no idea that it had anything to do with hair. But obviously, once you start watching the film, you sort of pick up and work out that it does. And I guess when they had those little title screens throughout the film, I think that was one of the final ones, was Napoli. So it's sort of,
it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. I get one of my other things that I like to do at the moment is check out the translations for films. This one had a variety of translations across the board, which I thought was cool. So bear with me because I've got a couple here, and I just thought that all of them are fairly decent too. So we've got, in Brazil, it was called "Happiness by a Thread," so it's still got that tie-in of the thread of hair.
Like
it. In France, it was called "A Leading Woman." So pretty doesn't give much away in that one. That's a pretty
no.
In Germany, it was called "Old Braids," and I don't even know if I actually got to see her in braids at all in this film. So that was an interesting.
Old braids.
In Greece, it was just called "Almost" with an exclamation mark. In Hungary, it was called "Let's Cut Into It" with an exclamation mark. So that was obviously to do with hair. Italy, it was called "Cut It Out," which obviously again with hair.
Yep, all out.
Japanese, "I want to forget the fairy tale."
Yeah. That's not terrible, actually.
In Poland, it was called "Seize Life by the Hair."
That's bad.
In Vietnam, it was called "Hair Loss." And the final one I've got was in Spain. It was called "Disheveled." just the title.
Wow.
So that was a pretty brutal title.
They really went all out in making sure that it was going to be a title that would resonate with any particular culture. They didn't just go, you know what, this is called Nappily Ever After, wherever it is. If they don't get it, they don't get it. They really put the effort in, because some of them weren't even like an adaptation of Nappily Ever After. It was just like, I watched the film and this is what I think it should be called.
Yeah, I thought we could have, in Australia, it could have been called like "Fair Income Haircut" or something like that.
Sheila's bald.
So that was funny. This one was nominated for a few awards as well, which they're nothing too outstanding, I guess, but it had 4 nominations and a win, so 5 altogether. Our favourite features there were the Golden Trailer Awards.
Golden Trailer.
For the best title credit sequence for a feature film, and then a couple of others for makeup at the Hollywood Makeup Artist Awards, and then the Image Awards and the Young Actress Awards. Sorry, the Young Artist Awards, where it was nominated for Young Actress for Daria Johns, which is
Yep. Yeah, no, good point.
Consensus time. What have you got for the consensus?
Yeah, well, it was positive, really positive. it's a 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb of 7,500 ratings. And it's a 3.3 out of 5 on Letterboxd, so higher than IMDb, just under 5,000 ratings. So really, really popular. That's like, sorry, we're not talking like amazing with critically acclaimed movie, but anything that we see that's over 3 stars, we probably honestly doing this podcast, looking at every single Netflix original film, we probably get 1 in 10 over 3 stars, right? Does that sound about right to you? Yeah, this is one of them.
The Google users, this has at 95%, which is a lot higher than we've had recently, and the Rotten Tomatoes as well is fairly positive. The critics had it at 71% on 14 reviews, so no consensus on that, but the audience had it very similar, 73% on about 350 reviews. So yes, very very positive feedback on this one, all round almost.
Hugely popular.
Yeah. Okay. Early thoughts. Give us your early thoughts for this.
Yeah, like I've obviously missed something because I had a lot of trouble with this, and I want to preface this by saying that I probably wasn't in the best mindset whilst watching it. I was, as you know, Jesse, in the middle of a fantasy footy grand final. Things weren't looking too good, and I was sort of keeping an eye on the stats. And I also just jammed my lawnmower that afternoon as well before I'd done most of my backyard, so I had to take that to the shop. So my mood wasn't great. But Nappily Ever After certainly didn't provide a distraction for me or work me out of my funk at all. And in fact, probably for the first 2/3 of it, I was actively disliking this movie. And I mean, the message is great. Like the whole idea of loving yourself for who you are and don't let others dictate the way you behave or you look. But that doesn't mean I ever felt connected to any of the characters or even, like I just didn't know what the characters were going to do from what they did 5 minutes ago. It just all felt really forced and cringy. And I know it got a lot of love, but maybe people loved it because it was that potential switch your brain off and, take a nice message out and maybe relate to the characters and the idea of treating yourself. But none of that felt like it was directed at me. So I've missed the boat on this one.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I think anytime we do a rom-com, I guess that can be if you're not in on it, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm definitely not neither of us are the target demographic for this one at all. And I can appreciate this one and see how it's a pretty important film for a lot of people. And some of the especially the performance from Sanaa Lathan just gave this some memorable scenes for me that, this was a pass for me easily. So, but I agree. There are a few things in here that I'd like to chat about that really didn't sit well throughout.
Yeah, I know what you're saying where this wasn't, really directed at us, and it certainly wasn't. But it felt very specifically not directed at me. Like I felt like there was this really specific audience that would have loved it, and I wasn't in that, and I felt like I was very much not in that. I don't know how else to say it, that I felt like I was watching someone else's piece of work that I wasn't supposed to see or something like that.
Yeah, no, fair enough. All right, well, let's talk about some characters. Fill us in on who you'd like to talk about for the characters in this one.
Well, let's talk about Violet, obviously our main or our lead protagonist. I found that it was just a very stereotypical arc. Obviously at the start, you tend to dislike her because she's shallow and she's vain, and despite the fact that you do recognize that this line of thinking was forced upon her by her mother, she obviously hits rock bottom. She realizes that she's going to make decisions that make her happy and things look good for a bit, but then she slips back into those old ways before this triumphant rebirth, which was literally her being christened in a pool, where she's stronger and more independent and loves who she is more than ever. So that's fine. Very, very stereotypical, but don't have an issue with it. My problem with her as a character was I kind of never really got out of the whole dislike her phase, because I just think a lot of the motivation behind her decisions didn't seem clear to me from the character that I was introduced to. I think I'll probably talk about this more in my scenes, but I definitely struggled to connect with the film because I struggled to connect with Violet, and she was making these decisions that just didn't align with what she was doing 5 minutes earlier. And I didn't know how she got from point A to point B when I saw nothing in between that suggested that she should have got there. So that was my biggest issue, because I didn't like her. She didn't really do much for me to change the way I felt about her. but then she was making these decisions that didn't seem like her. Does that even make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Like I'm exactly the same. Like I hated her at the start, and I
Mm-hmm.
understand that that's what they wanted you to do because they wanted you to be along on this journey.
Mm-hmm.
But this whole idea of perfectionism and this preparation for this engagement day being the most important day of her life, it did not resonate with me whatsoever. And like obviously I'm not a girl, so the stakes of these important factors in her life were probably a little bit low for me. And like just the way that she treated people at the start, like even in a film where you're going to see this growth or this change, you still want to see some sort of good qualities to start off with. But she treated her assistant April like poorly. They tried to throw in these things with she blames her dad for saying that she's not good enough for him still, and blames the mum, and it's like it's everyone's fault except hers. And even there was no resolution to any of those issues. It was just like, let's dump her in the pool and it's all good, sort of thing. So yeah,
Yep.
I agree a little bit with what you're saying with her.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's interesting.
I've got Clint down next.
So, yeah. Yeah, go.
Yeah. Obviously, this guy really frustrated me too because he obviously likes what Violet stands for. This perfectionism, and he doesn't know anything about her. He just cares about her place in society and the way she looks. And that was all that I could really gather from this guy. Like, and that's meant to be the guy that she's so in love with and wants to be with. It didn't sit
I
right.
have a different take on Clint.
Yeah.
Look, maybe I'm being unreasonable, but he actually didn't seem like too bad a guy until the end. And it was only at the end that he became a real dick, because I just think that worked better for the story. Because when they broke up in the beginning, after he got to the dog and everything, his openness about how he feels with her and how she never lets herself open up, how she never takes a risk, how she's never really herself, is incredible advice, particularly in a relationship. Like, what an honest way to have a discussion with your partner. But then at the end, and I get that he's with her probably for those same reasons that you said, but there's obviously that desire for her to come out of her shell, that he's trying to get her out of her shell, because he's like, I don't even know you. And then at the end, all of a sudden, like, he's only shallow. He needs everything to be perfect. Oh, and by the way, you find out that he was sleeping around just in case you weren't convinced that he was a bad guy. Again, they just chuck all this stuff in the story because it works for Violet's character and Violet's arc. But it didn't seem true to the character that I was introduced to. And it's always been a pet peeve of mine in films when they do this. This is the story, so so-and-so's got to kill a guy, something like that. They just do it for the sake of doing it because it fits with plot. And I just think this film was as bad as any with it. And yeah, Clint, and I think that's another reason why I didn't like Violet as much, because when they broke up, I was like, well, this guy hasn't really done much wrong. In fact, he's trying to get you out of your shell, and you've just said, nah, I'm out of here. So I didn't have bad feelings towards Clint, really, at all. Like, I didn't like him, but I kind of respected the way he went about that. So that was probably the main catalyst for me not being able to clutch onto this.
Yeah, all fair points. I don't know. I just didn't like him at the start either. So, but I get what you're saying with, he was trying to do the right thing, but at the same time, I was just like, who has a party like this, and who has who buys a dog after 2
He was
years?
a douche. I agree with that side of it. Yeah. I didn't like him as much as I thought. When they had that scene, I was like, this is great. What a great scene to put into a film about honesty in a relationship and trying to empower her to be herself. That she just cracked the shits and quit. Like, come on.
Yeah, good. Who else do you want to talk about? Because I don't know.
I want to talk about Pauletta, who's Violet's mum, and for what this movie is trying to say, and it's a message as positive as you'll see in any film, Pauletta is a truly awful person. Violet's dad, who you could argue obviously could have done a bit more in the whole parenting caper, had the exact opposite philosophy to what Pauletta had. And he was a breath of fresh air with his advice and perspective. But why does this villain character of Pauletta, and I can't find a way to not think of her as a villain with the way that she treated her daughter and the ideas that she put into her head, and the way even at the end she was still treating her daughter. Why do they make her get back together with this guy who I kind of liked because he was the exact opposite. In fact, I was happy for him that he got out of the toxic relationship that he had with his wife. And then all of a sudden, they're just back together in the pool. Like, why does the villain get a happy ending when she doesn't learn her lesson? Why?
I think they tried to blame all that away on one line at like one of the parties where they were talking about her mother and how she didn't do this with her daughter, and it was like a touchy, like just leave that. So that's why she's such a bad person. So it's not her fault either. It's none of the characters' faults that they're bad in this film.
Started higher up, okay.
Yeah, but I think a lot of the couplings at the end frustrated, and probably talk about this a bit further. But yeah, the dad, I thought he was a bit of fresh air. I liked a couple of his lines and a couple of the moments that he had. So that it was nice to see that he was still in and around, even though he didn't, didn't want to pretend. I don't know if he was pretending, but he was making it out that he didn't necessarily want to be there.
He was stunted as well by the wife, clearly. Like he had really good ideas and philosophies about parenting that he obviously didn't put into practice. And you just assume this because Pauletta took over and said, no, this is how we're raising my girl because this is how she's going to find the perfect man.
Yeah. All right. Will and Zoe, I put them together almost just as... I thought she was the performance from the kid that played Zoe was really good. I enjoyed seeing her around, but this whole Will character completely confused me as well as another character that I thought he was this breath of fresh air that helped her realize lots of things in her life. And this goes into the scenes a lot because a lot of the scenes with him just open these doors or like did things that I was like, what the hell? How is that a response? Like some of his responses to some of the situations were just, ridiculous. So I found him really hard, even though I wanted her to be with him. I found that his decision making really poor.
Yeah, like I mean, he's a really likable guy. Like I automatically liked him's character. Like you said, he probably was that breath of fresh air. But I mean, he was obviously the embodiment of what the story was trying to tell because you've got this man who challenges gender roles by the fact that he is a single father who's a hairdresser. He listens to himself and how he feels, and if someone doesn't fit in with those ideals, well, he doesn't have time for them. With that said, obviously, probably could have been a more attentive father. I don't think he was a great parent. But I guess the fact that he isn't perfect is kind of appealing too. But if he wasn't in this film, I don't even know if I would have got through it, to be honest. Like I needed him because he was something. Like, maybe it was a bit weird where it all fit, but at least he was a good guy that I could attach myself to.
Yep. Good. All right. I think that's it for the characters.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Let's. The director. This is an interesting. What have you got for the director on this one?
Yeah. So it's Haifaa al-Mansour. Well, she's Saudi Arabia's first ever female director or filmmaker, however you want to put it. Like it's a incredible feat and probably a really interesting story that she's going to be able to tell one day. But she's done obviously a few docos and shorts, but her first feature film, which was Mary Shelley, starring Elle Fanning, actually got her a nomination at the Edinburgh Film Festival. So she's done a couple more features, including this and since, and she's got one in production at the moment. So going to be a very interesting little career that she's carving out, and you know what a trailblazer.
Yeah, I think like the docos, I think were put up for the foreign language at the Academy Awards, but didn't get the nomination or whatever it was. But I thought, interesting little story too. That she completed her film studies degree in Australia, in Sydney, which is a cool little story. And yeah, like a really interesting career that I probably wouldn't mind checking out a little bit more. To like, got a little bit of criticism here and there for the focus that she has on women's rights and issues, because Saudi Arabia is obviously in this transitional sort of stage with what the female gender can and can't do in their society. So really, really intriguing career, I'm sure, is ahead of her.
Yeah, absolutely. And if she studied in Australia, I'm surprised we haven't claimed her as our own yet. We're very good at that.
We are, aren't we? We sure are. All right. Scene time. Give us some scenes that you enjoyed in this one.
Yeah, look, as you know, I had a lot of trouble with this film in general, to the point where the first scene that I liked was just nothing to do with the scene, but the park that they went to on their date was just a beautiful park. And, you know, you got to give credit to the location scout for finding it and putting it in the movie, because it made me happy. I quite enjoyed it. It was a beautiful park. It was a really nice park. And then
the most random waterfall of like sort of mermaid's face or something.
Very pretty though.
Yeah.
And and then the only other scenes that I did like, right at the end, I really enjoyed when Violet told her mum off, which was, that's the slam dunk shot in a movie like this, where you're leading up to this kind of angst and it's going to come out. But it was good to see it, but it was also nice to see in the background her dad was smiling when she was doing it. That's why it pissed me off even more that they got together in the pool. But and the other thing that I did like was that she didn't have this big public breakup with Clint, and there wasn't this big reconciliation moment with Will. It was not about the relationships as much as it was about her and her self-discovery and her doing what she wants to do. And I appreciated that. It would have been very easy to at least have like a kiss with Will at the end, or, going to dinner, and like it left it very open, even though you sort of assume that, there's going to be that connection there and they probably will get together. It didn't matter, didn't need it. And that was important too.
I really like that you've said that, because the whole time after, I just assumed she still stayed with Clint. Yeah, you saw his disappointed face of her in the water and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I was just like, oh, she's not going to, I just assume she's not going to grow that much, and she's still going to stay with him because she's going to make it work. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, but now you've said that, I'm like, okay, that makes more sense than. But I literally thought, I was like, oh, she's still with Clint, because otherwise, why is she not with Will?
Yeah. Look, doesn't mean I'm right, but my take was that she's before. Obviously, things when it was so. Just the visual of him not being in the pool when half the party's in the pool, looking dejected. She kind of looks at him and is like, you know what? Nah. She turns around and has fun, and you sort of see there's the disconnect between these two. They've realised that they're not on the same page. And rather than her just running to another guy, it was like, well, I'm going to sort my life out and do what's important to me before I figure that all out. But that's just my read on it. I actually didn't even consider any other way.
No, I like your read a lot better. I feel stupid because I was like, oh, she just stayed with him. Like, I was just like, based on everything else, she's just going to stay with him. No, that's good. All right, my turn for some scenes. I thought, as much as I didn't like the birthday party with the dog giving, I thought after Clint had left and she's crying and the dog just pissed on the floor, I laughed. I thought that was quite. I was like, haha, that's funny. And I thought the buzz cut scene in the mirror was actually a really good piece of filmmaking. And I know that it's probably really obvious and in your face, but I thought it was a really well done scene, to, the emotion in her face and just the ability, to take on board. And, I think they said she practiced with a week the days before with, like, doing the shaves and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
Just to actually see it on screen, doing her own hair. I thought that was cool.
I wanted to like that because you could tell, like, this was the scene of the film, the big powerful moment of her coming to. And I think I wasn't enough into the character to care, even though you knew it was going to come, because the key art is her with a bald head. But I didn't dislike it, but it just didn't quite get me, which I'm sure it would have got tons and tons of people because it was important.
Yep. There was this line that I just really appreciated where she said, Violet said, so she's so used to looking at herself in the mirror all the time. It's only when she catches somebody's reaction that it all comes back. And I just really thought that was a nice little moment that, she's slowly starting to move away from these ideals or values that everything's about looks and way things appear. And finally, like, just in the complete opposite, that her father is happy to be in this, underwear catalog, and he doesn't care what everyone else is laughing at it or whatever, and he doesn't care. He's like, look at this. And I think the mum called him like a geriatric porn star or something like. And I just thought that was really nice that, they're even sitting there having a meal and there's a big billboard of it behind them. He's confident in who he is. It doesn't matter. So I thought that was cool. The complete opposite, obviously, of these artificial ideas that you need all these nice things to make yourself a good person.
Yeah, you're right.
What are some things that you didn't like?
There's a bit here, so just bear with me. A lot of it, again, is in the first half of the film where I was just bothered by so much of it. But her getting sprayed by that hose, that whole sort of sequence felt like a cartoon that, oh, well, is it going to rain? Oh, no, it's not going to rain. Oh, okay, we can go outside and everything's going to be okay. Oh, they're playing with the hose. Oh, I love playing with the hose. Well, obviously you're going to get sprayed by the hose. Like, it's just not going to happen in real life. Like, they try and make so much of this movie based in real life, and then they start it with that. So I've got this real cartoony kind of feel, which is fine, but it's not the tone of the film. And this gets me. So yeah, my most hated scene was that scene I spoke about before when they had the fight and broke up. But the idea of her thinking, and this obviously is a very male perspective, and people would probably completely disagree with me because I'm not being able to be in the other side of the shoe. But the idea of her thinking that he won't ever propose to her because he bought her a dog is ridiculous. A dog is an incredible commitment to make to a relationship. And the fact that she gets a dog, fair enough if she wanted to get proposed to and she's upset. But for her to put two and two together and think, oh, he's never going to propose to me. It's like, oh, so he just wants to give you a dog and leave? Like, that's insanity. But obviously that led into what I loved his honesty about how she needs to open herself up and be herself. This is the advice that she somehow finds at some point throughout the film that he gave to her at the very start. But rather than realizing how right he is, she basically just says, so you're never going to marry me, and breaks up with him, which just felt like the pettiest, most pathetic thing ever. And she lost me from that point. It's sticking with me, this scene. And then that leads to her being in that little bit of a funk, and they have a scene where she's presenting in the boardroom and she knocks over one of the boards. Like, come on. Like, fair enough if you might not be on your game, but I'm not that much of an idiot that you need to tell me, oh, she's in a funk. Oh, you didn't realize? Okay, we'll make her knock over a board because she's that much of a funk. Like, no. I don't like being treated like an idiot. And that's why I don't like the fact that her mum fainted when she saw her with a shaved head. I mean, give me a break. Like, again, the tone of the film is just chopping and changing with this cartoony type feel to what's a serious, really nice message. Slightly different take here, but I didn't dislike this, but I also don't know how I feel about a cancer recovery group giving her the confidence to own it. I don't know how well that sat with me, and I'm not going to be hypercritical of it, but watching it, it felt a bit off to me. But it's not a terrible thing. It just felt a bit weird. And the only other thing that I didn't like was when he was clearly chopping up an onion and then he was clearly crying from the onion. This is a guy who just doesn't cry. And she's like, don't cry. And he's like, no, this is the onion. Like, ugh. But then, of course, he proposes in that exact same scene. But this is what I mean while I was actively disliking this movie. There's often movies that I don't like that I sit there and go, oh, man, this is slow, or this is boring, or I'm not in this film. Things are happening on the screen where I think that the filmmakers thought I was an idiot, or they were just on a completely different page to what I thought they were trying to do, and it didn't work. So that's my read.
I thoroughly enjoyed your little rant. That gave me a good smile. I had a good giggle. I had a good laugh. And I think I completely understand. And I have a hunch that it's the genre and the style of film. And this is not me trying to be racist or anything whatsoever, but the structure and the jokes and the laughs that play. These are the types of codes and the conventions that they follow in a lot of African American comedies. And where we obviously, that type of humor might not be the humor that we're used to, but these sorts of situations are often quite funny for people. If you've seen any of Tyler Perry's Medea films and even like just talking about this now, it's brought to mind. There's it's like a 3-part short mini series on Netflix called Self Made, and it stars the lady from Hidden Figures. I can't remember her name. Anyway,
Octavia Spencer.
Yeah, Octavia Spencer. Fantastic. Yeah, so it stars Octavia Spencer, and it is literally called Self Made, and it's about an African American lady setting up a hairstyling business, and it's a 3-part series about the hair, the culture, the importance of what hair means to African American women, like their place in society and all that sort of stuff. And all of that runs through this film so much. And I think that possibly without our background knowledge and understanding of, like, I only barely know a tiny little bit because I've seen this Self-Made miniseries, but without that background, there's a lot of stuff in this that doesn't work for us. I think that could possibly be it.
That's an awesome point. And that probably comes back nicely to me saying that I just felt like this movie was made for somebody else.
Mm.
and I was watching it, and I've been asked to talk about it, kind of thing. And that's kind of where it's at. Like it felt, I've never felt like such an imposter watching a film than watching this film. That it's just like, this is not my film. Why am I watching it, kind of thing? And you probably couldn't be more right. Doesn't excuse how I feel about the character when she gets broken up with some great advice and doesn't take it. I don't like that kind of dummy spear. That doesn't sit well with me. But you're absolutely right with everything else.
Yeah. All right. So a couple of things that I wasn't a fan of. When she's in the taxi with the taxi driver on the way to the hospital, and he does this whole analogy of a puzzle, and once you've got the right puzzle pieces and they fit and all that sort of jazz, I was like, it's too early in the movie for any type of resolution with this guy to happen, and just to see rock up and he's sitting there with like a nurse, which it could have just been a coworker they're having a break, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you slept with her. He's like, yeah, well, I did. It's like,
it certainly didn't seem that bad. Like they were just literally like having a break together and socializing. Yeah. And she's like, I don't even want to talk to you.
That blew up out of control. And then the barbecue scene really annoyed me too. I'm sure at some stage that Violet would have told her mum, I'm bringing along this guy.
Oh, yeah.
And she rocks up, and the mum's brought this guy called Jared, who's a lawyer, along to try and set her up with him. And it's just this really awkward conversation where I thought Violet did a pretty good job of sort of defending Will and standing up for him and saying, he's a small business owner, all this sort of stuff. And then out of nowhere, Will just cracks the shits and storms off and goes, I thought you knew what you wanted, but you don't, and like leaves. And I'm like, she was pretty good in that situation. So that really frustrated
It's more
me.
the way the mum spoke about him, and I think the mum said like, "Oh, is this the guy?" Or "Oh, you seen this guy?" Or what? She made a point about what Violet might have said to the mum, and just didn't end well. But that was pretty bad.
Based on all the nice things we've seen them do together, I felt like they could have had a proper conversation where they discussed it. And she goes, "Look, this is mum. She's crazy. Blah blah blah." Rather than blow up.
Was waiting for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then finally, I just had the end with who she ends up with, because in the back of my mind I was like, she's still with Clint, and that really annoyed
Fair enough.
me. But but you've opened my eyes a little bit, and maybe she's single, and that would be nice story too. All right. Some themes, some ideas. What's this one saying?
Look, this film is saying that you do you. Don't be influenced by how you should look, how you should act, what you should do for work. Do what feels right. Do what makes you happy. And if you're not going to, don't peddle your own insecurities on the people that are close to you. It's as I said, it's a really nice message. It's something that in a romantic comedy that's probably going to be aimed at, I want to say sort of teenage sort of girls, but I also think girls of all ages will probably connect more with this film. It's a wonderful thing to take out of a film.
Yeah, I completely agree. This whole idea of this self-growth that we saw through her, I guess, with, falling in love with yourself again, and owning yourself and being who you are, and not letting negativity be something that brings you down, which leads into this whole idea of like female empowerment too, because it was nice to see she had a good job. She was still fairly, even though she has these emotional breakdowns over, who she thought she was going to be married to, she's still fairly strong in her choices moving forward from there. And that idea of hair too, I mean, this idea of vanity almost, or needing makeup, and that was like the thing that she was pitching, was this idea of makeup too, and being natural is good, and this idea that sometimes the baggage of having straight hair for an African American or a black woman is such a detrimental thing that that when she does go blonde, and she has this idea, I think the white guy says, so having blonde hair tells me that you're not afraid of taking chances.
Yeah.
It's like, what does that have to do with anything realistically? It's just a look. It's nothing to do with who she is as a person.
Exactly.
So yeah. All right, good. So what did we take from this one? What are some ideas on this?
Look, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm glad it had a modest runtime. I'm glad that I watched it as part of my streaming service. And I'll be honest, I don't plan on taking too much more out of this one. To be honest, this discussion is probably more than I've taken out of the whole film, particularly with the references to African Americans that I wasn't picking up throughout the film.
Good, yeah. I think although it may not have been our favorite film, I think that more of these types of films are quite important, and I think it's a brave step to put a film like this. And I don't think that this would have got a theatrical release in Australia whatsoever anyway, so it's nice that we can still access this on a streaming service, because 15 years ago we would never have been able to see it in Australia at all. It
What
wouldn't
if it
work
was
well
Halle
for us.
Berry?
If completely different story, obviously. Good call. I like that. IMDb. Did you jump onto IMDb to check anyone out?
Yeah, I did. This is a good one because Lyriq Bent, who plays Will, is Lieutenant Daniel Rigg from the Saw movies, which I love all the Saw movies. But I can't believe that I didn't pick this up because the only difference in his appearance is in Saw movies. He's got this like little mustache and this kind of stylized goatee. But it's crazy how big a difference that makes because I was looking at photos of him from both. I'm like, oh, it's clearly the same guy. But I just wasn't picking up on it because of his little bit of facial hair. So there you go. That's a good one.
It's a good one. I had one as well, which was a little bit of an off-center one. So when Violet's pitching her deal, there's this one guy called Tyson,
Oh,
who's
yeah.
like the main sort of guy she's pitching to, and is a an old NBA player. And I was like, I need to double check this. So John Sally,
Really?
yeah, he's got 4 rings. He played for Detroit. He played for Detroit like during the late '90s. Won 2 rings with them.
Yeah.
He got one. I think he played Miami. He played at Toronto. He got a ring with Jordan in '96, and he got a ring with Kobe in like 2000. So
Wow.
big NBA star. So that was a good little pickup. I was like, I know
Has he done
you.
any acting?
He was in. I think he possibly in one of the Bad Boys films with Will Smith.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
But anyway, yeah. I was like, you are so familiar. So that was good.
Good pickup.
All right. What else we got? Question time. Anything that you wanted to ask?
Why did she invite Zoe to the engagement party?
Yeah.
Because she's basically just broken up with her father and it's a party about her marrying another guy. But she's like, do you want to come to my engagement party so you can wear a cool dress? It's the most absurd thing I've ever heard.
I guess that having her there made her revelation that Zoe would wear no shoes made more sense. But that's part of the reason I was so confused with that ending, and I literally obviously we pre-write our questions. So my one question was that ending. Did it work for you? I wanted her to get rid of Clint.
Yeah, well, it worked because she did.
Yeah.
Now this is like the ending. She did. So.
Good. Thank you. You've answered my question for me. The chapter interludes. What did you think of those? The words that were sort of preluding
No.
what was happening. No.
No, maybe. Yeah, sorry. Nut was probably. It wasn't too bad, but it didn't do much for me. But I get the look and feel from basing itself on a novel. It was okay, but it really didn't do much for me. I don't like things that spoil things for me. Like obviously the chapter was about what the hair was going to be there, which I guess doesn't spoil too much. But I'm finding this with. I'm actually watching The Mandalorian at the moment, which obviously is a TV show. It's so slightly different, but they've got a chapter for every single episode. And it's all well and good to name your episode something, but don't have it flash up on the screen where it says, chapter 4, the sanctuary, where I'm like, oh, well, they're going to find a sanctuary this episode. Like, I don't like that because I'm just waiting for something to happen. It kind of, this one, sorry, wasn't too bad.
I like the man. It's just playing good homage to the Western genre. I guess that those are the sorts of things you'd see in Western TV shows and films. I think that's very
sure. Yeah, but yeah, maybe it's just my brain. I like to figure things out myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I obviously need answers because I needed someone to tell me that she broke up with Clint. So that's where we're at. All right. I think we're ready to wrap this up and give it a rating out of 5 to give us a Flicks from average. So MJ, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, like the movie itself, it did very little for me personally. I couldn't connect with the main protagonist. I kind of felt like everyone's motivations were dictated by the storyline as opposed to any sort of living, breathing character decisions that I wanted to see. All of which was based around a really valid message that was spoon-fed to the audience basically from the opening scene. So message great. The way you're telling it might not have been as great, but I didn't like it. This is 1 star for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
based on what you said, I could probably see that we were going to go there. And I probably I didn't. This isn't my favorite film of all time, but I found a lot of things in it that not necessarily for me, but if I imagined someone else enjoying it, and as a film, I still enjoyed bits and pieces of it. So I think that it's probably essential viewing for some younger females about vanity and about that idea of not really mattering about what you look like. I think that and like you mentioned, it is spoon fed, but I think that some audience members would appreciate that and really take that message to heart and be like, hey, this movie really connected with me. So because of the message that I took out of it, and especially the performance from Violet, I'm giving it a 3. So
Good.
that'll give us a 2 out of 5, which is I think probably a good little spot for it to sit.
I respect what you said. I think you're probably right. I don't think that discludes the fact that there's probably films that a lot of films that do it better. The same message is still there, but it just begs the question though: if you write a film with good intentions and a good message and make a poor film, does it make it a good film? And that's kind of what I was tossing up when I was thinking about this, because I was reading a lot of reviews and a lot of people were sort of saying that, oh man, this film just what a great message, really spoke to me. Oh, everyone should be doing this and rah rah. And I get it. I didn't get it personally out of it. I didn't take that out of the film as much as I understood it on a visceral level. But it begs the question. Just because it's got a nice message doesn't mean it's a nice film. I don't know. Maybe it can. Like maybe I'm being too negative. But
no, I can completely, like, everything that you said, I didn't disagree with. So I can see where you're at. All right. Well, we're on socials. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram. Please give us a follow, a like, whatever you can. Question for this week is perfection exhausting?
Yeah, good one. Good question.
Yeah, I think.
And surely it is. I don't know. I'm so far from perfect. It's not funny, but I imagine it would be.
Exactly. Hopefully, someone that listens is perfect and can tell us all about it. All right. We're back again next week for another show, and next week we have an action thriller, which is a bit of a switch up from this. So I'm looking forward to this because I like that genre quite a bit. So it's from 2018, and it's called Hold the Dark. It's directed by Jeremy Saulnier. It stars Jeffrey Wright, Alexander Skarsgård, James Badge Dale, Riley Keough, Julian Black Antelope, and Beckham Crawford. So that's
nice.
Alexander Skarsgård, which is a big name.
Oh, there's a couple in there.
Yeah. So get on board for next week, and we'll have a thriller if you're interested in checking that one out.
So Skarsgård was already in Mute that we did, and James Badge Dale was in Spectral. So we've got a few coming back on the Netflix bandwagon.
And from writing the cast, the first few members of the cast, this was written by Macon Blair, I think.
Oh, really?
So yeah. So
it's like this third or fourth Netflix film, whether he's written or directed it. He's everywhere.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that was for this one. I saw it at the top of the page. It's like, ooh, this could be an interesting one.
I like Macon Blair because he directed I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore. Yeah, cool.
Good. So yeah, so we've got that next week. So
I'm in.
Thanks for having a good chat about this one, and yeah, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, it was probably worth a good chat. I appreciate it because otherwise I couldn't understand why everyone else didn't think the same way I thought when they watched it. So that's the benefit of having this conversation.
Yeah, and you helped explain the end for me, so that was a positive.
Yeah, that's true.
See ya.
See you, mate.